Enshrouded has to be one of the most unique survival crafting RPGs to come out recently, and after 100 hours, I finally completed Enshrouded. So I wanted to talk about my experience with it, is it cooked, and if it's worth playing in its current state, covering its systems, unique mechanics, progression loops, all of it. Just so that we're all on the same page though, Enshrouded is an epic fantasy survival crafting RPG that takes place in a world that's been consumed by a corrupting fog known as the Shroud. You, along with your fellow Flameborn, are tasked with pulling the Shroud from its roots and rebuilding civilization. As you complete quests, fight enemies, and explore abandoned locations, you will unlock new skills and items that will help you drive the deadly Shroud back further, opening new biomes, dungeons, and quests to complete. Also, while doing this, you will find NPC Flameborn villagers that will assist you in crafting gear, reagents, and more, assuming you provide them with a place to live. This game can be played in single player or up to 16 players in a given lobby. The server also has built-in custom game settings, so if you want to make things more difficult, easier, have more loot drops, add a hunger mechanic, the options are all available. Your main goal in Enshrouded is going to be leveling your flame altar, as doing so will clear new parts of the map that were otherwise blocked off by the deadly Shroud. During this time, you have to go out in the world and find lost villagers, crafting stations, encounter boss monsters, and eventually delve into the Shroud and clear elixir wells. Ultimately in this game, you're likely going to find yourself going out of the world gathering resources like copper or tin in between doing quests or elixir wells. Before these expeditions, you'll need to fill up on food though, which will give you buffs like increased damage, extra stamina, HP, etc. Each food has a food type, so meat, grains, liquids, things like that. And you can only have 3 unique food type buffs at any given time. So if you ate some chicken, corn on the cob, and milk, that would be enough to fill all your buffs for an allotted time. Alongside food, if you have a pet cat or a dog, if you pet them, you can get some buffs. Or if you find one of those Vuka shrines or build your own, you can get a buff from that as well. Eventually you'll unlock the grappling hook and the gliding, which makes getting around the world a whole lot easier. Your early glider isn't going to be that great, but it beats walking around everywhere, and you can get some good sights while flying from the spires. With these tools, especially through the hollow halls and the ancient spires, you'll have puzzles that will utilize these items, as well as the ability to create your own grappling hook latches to place in around your own base. So if you ever had a dream of having a base that was up in the sky that you had to grapple up to, you could technically do that. I kind of want to do that actually next run. Now let's talk a little bit about the Shroud, which is going to be a big factor throughout the world. As a Flameborn, the Shroud doesn't kill you outright, but you can only last in the Shroud for a limited amount of time before meeting an early demise. It's in these areas though where you'll find rare items, bosses, and locations. For example, in the Shroud you will find locations like gem forges, which will allow you to socket gems into your weapons. You'll also find Shroud lairs, which are like mini cave dungeons. To be honest though, they never really felt like they were worth the risk. I maybe did 2 or 3 of them just so I could get the resources needed to socket my weapons, but the rewards weren't that great from what I remember. Then of course you also have the elixir wells, which are these large wells that you can descend into, often having bosses, Shroud roots, or both. And I don't think I've mentioned the Shroud roots this far in, but essentially you'll find Shroud roots all around the map and they're basically keeping the Shroud alive. When you chop these Shroud roots down, it'll often clear a big pocket of Shroud on the map, and you'll get some extra skill points along with it. To be honest, I never really found the Shroud timer to be too much of a problem outside of a few areas, but early on there were some pockets of Shroud that were tedious to travel because I didn't have a good glider or I didn't keep bombs on me. Alright, now let's talk about combat. Combat overall I would say is fun and runs pretty smooth. You have a lot of different mechanics from plunging attacks, kicks, jumping attacks, grappling onto enemies. I would say my biggest complaint with combat is a lot of enemy types do get overused. For example, you'll sometimes still run into the same Shroud zombies at level 1 versus the Shroud zombies at level 40. Not looking all that much different or dropping much better stuff. I would say it's mostly inside the Shroud where this problem is apparent, but even with animals and scavengers, some enemy types are reused regularly. I would say it was the same for bosses, but at a much larger scale too. Don't get me wrong, the bosses were a lot of fun, and the mechanics made them out to be some of the main highlights of me playing Enshrouded, but there's only a handful of bosses that will constantly be thrown at you from level 10 to level 30. And I won't spoil anything, but that last boss fight was way more epic than most of the boss fights in the game. And I would love to see more bosses with more unique mechanics added like that. Now a bit about weapon types. There are also a good amount of weapon types from 1 to 2-handed axes, maces, and swords, with the addition of staves, wands, daggers, and bows. The only weapons I felt like were missing are spears and maybe crossbows, but overall you have a good variety of weapon types that you can choose from. I also mentioned it earlier, but most skills like Merciless Attack or Plunging Attack are picked through skills, which is okay, but some skills feel like they're required to take, like Up Giraffe, Double Jump, or the Dodge Mid-Stun skill, which I don't really like that. The benefit of this though is it doesn't really cost a lot to respec your skill tree. Simply go to the Flame Altar, spend a couple runes, and you just get all your skill points back. A little bit on the skill tree though, I really like the MMO feel of it. You have roles like tank, healer, DPS. It makes it feel like you're playing a different class every time you respec. And having a group of players with roles in mind was exactly what we needed when we started doing the Hollow Halls. Essentially, a Hollow Halls is a large, expansive dungeon which you have to unlock using a key, and inside there are levels similar to the Ancient Spires that require you to find some runes, do a puzzle, or fight some skeletons to open the next door. Essentially, you repeat that though until you make it to the final boss, which will be different depending on the dungeon you do, but after defeating that boss, you'll get rewarded with a large sarcophagus of weapons and other items. I really like the idea of Hollow Halls in concept, and I did have a lot of fun doing them, but they were all very samey in the end. They were still very fun with a group of people with all unique builds, but the boss types weren't very unique though, or at least you could find people with their moveset out in the world like the Cyclops or the Sickle Sides. And this place is definitely a place where I'd expect to fight a couple unique bosses or two. It's just too cool. Each Hollow Halls also look very much the same. It would have been nice if each one had their own color or at least a unique vibe depending on the area you were in. Like maybe purple flames for the Kindle Waste, orange fire for the Highlands, green fire for the Springlands, something like that. Overall, I really like the concept of these and wish there were more to them, or at least a reason to go back once you finish. There are some unique resources you can get in them, but unless you're building something very specific or missed a quest item, you probably won't be going back that often. And I guess this is a little bit of an afterthought in terms of combat, but I do want to mention armor. As you're playing the game, you'll unlock armor sets that are made by villagers you summon, and the more quests and higher you level up your flame altar, the better gear you will be able to craft. You can also find armor pieces out in the world like you can most other items, but armor feels a little bit more rare. Also, another thing I really like is that there is a cosmetic option, so if you find an armor set you prefer, you can mod yourself to look like that armor set while wearing a different set, as well as the ability of changing the clothing color with clothing dyes, all which can be found through exploration and questing. Now, a big factor in terms of enjoyment in this game, at least for me, is the building. And I have to say, this might be my favorite building system of all survival crafting games. Building in Enshrouded is voxel based, but hides the blockiness very well, allowing for some really cool and realistic builds. I don't know how to explain it, but basically when you're building walls, sometimes the game will autofill support walls or blend the walls for you. Definitely has some similarities to placement if you've played like Minecraft where you can build things by blocks, but in Enshrouded you can also place other different useful shapes. And have I forgotten to mention that there are a stupid amount of building blocks to work with in this game? As you break new blocks you find around the world, you unlock them to craft, but you can also unlock unique blocks from completing quests. If you're really into building, the possibilities are endless. I was also really impressed by the builds around me that I saw people complete. Building and decorating your home isn't completely cosmetic either. As you decorate your base more and more, you get a comfort score, which will give you a buff that lasts longer depending on how comfortable you are. In terms of placeables, there are a large variety of items, decorations, villagers, pets, and farm animals to populate your village with. You can even terraform holes in the ground, fill them up with water, catch some fish, and put fish inside the pond you created. Now, for the people that don't really enjoy building, I wouldn't say there's a function to have a base outside of a place to keep your crafting stations and loot, but I do think it'd be cool in the future to have like traveling visitors, raids, or even random encounters. Now, farming is very extensive from the crops you can plant to the food recipes you can cook, but the system itself is pretty simple and straightforward. Once you unlock a seed bed, you can turn plants into seeds, then grow them yourself, rather than having to forage for them out in the world. These foods can then be used in cooking stations, which will make better foods and provide better buffs depending on your class type. In addition to crop farming, you also have animal farming too. So you can go out and tame some fantastical goats, birds, or yaks, craft them some unique feed, build them some beds, then harvest resources off them from milk to eggs to wool. Now, the process of farming is really cool the way it's set up. It's simple to do and you don't need water for your plants. You just need seeds, the right soil, and time. And at the very least, it's nice while you're out in the world doing things, your village is also generating things for you. Now, I've only really played the first couple hours of this game in single player, and the majority of my playthrough has been in a group. So I can only really speak from multiplayer experience, but multiplayer was nice. Even in a locally hosted lobby, we didn't have a lot of connections or bug issues, and I don't think clearing bosses in hollowed halls would have been as fun without them. That being said, I don't think it's unplayable by any means. You might just have to do a bit more grinding and try not to get overwhelmed by the amount of quests that will be thrown your way. One part of multiplayer that I did really enjoy, but it's not really an important function in terms of systems, but you can find a half a dozen different instruments along with music sheets of different songs. And while playing these will give you comfort, if you play these together with another player, they will play in unison and increase that comfort buff. I think it's a really cool concept that they added these little instruments you could play during downtime. We ended up playing a lot of these in the hollow halls in between each level and kind of just wherever we felt like it. It's a cool mechanic that doesn't add a lot functionally, but it's something I think fondly of. Lastly, I do want to talk about a few things I wish were in the game or I hope is added eventually. First one is the spear weapon type. Especially with the new water areas added, I can see a harpoon weapon being viable, so a single-handed or a two-handed spear I think would be cool. Next is tameable combat pets. One thing that I felt was missing from the Enshrouded skill tree was a proper Beastmaster skill that allowed you to have and tame animals around the world. Even if it was an ability where just a bunch of animals could come to fight for you temporarily, I think it'd be cool if there was a pet-focused class. And if no pets, at least some combat companions. Another thing I really wanted was to be able to name markers. The custom markers is a good system, it's better than nothing, but being able to pair some text to it and knowing exactly what the item is instead of just a random resource icon would be a huge help. That, or at least having more icons to choose from. A big thing I feel like this game is missing is automation, so I feel like the ability to have villagers gather and craft things for you autonomously would be really nice to have. And lastly, the ability to mog your weapon. I like that you can transmogrify your armor, but it feels weird that you're not able to do it for your weapons. If there are some other things that you think that should be added that I didn't mention, be sure to let me know in the comments. From what I'm seeing from the roadmap though, we should be getting some more enemies, more combat improvements, and potentially a new zone, which is exciting. So final verdict, is the game cooked? Is it worth playing? And I have to say absolutely yes, this game is worth playing, and I'm very much looking forward to 1.0. And I hope the devs continue to cook with Enshrouded, because Keen Games has done a magnificent job at creating this survival crafting RPG. Whether you've played Enshrouded or not, let me know your thoughts on the game and whether or not you think this game is worth it for you. And if you'd like to check out our full Enshrouded playthrough that we did on this channel, I'll have a link on the screen for that right here. But until next time, y'all, thanks for watching, and take care.